All right. Hello, everyone. It's time for Manna Insect's second season of free webinars. The talk is, of course, about insects, in most cases, specifically about black soldier fly. And the topics vary a little bit. We've had some of the topics, at least on the sort of name level, similar to what we have in the spring, but all the content has been updated and we have several new topics as well. And by the way, we will have other free webinars coming out this autumn already, that we've planned, but we haven't announced yet. So stay tuned. And I would really, really strongly advise you to follow Manna Insect LinkedIn account for all information about upcoming webinars, news, lots of business and use cases, and lots of videos coming out this autumn season as well. These free webinars will be running roughly about once a month, and you can see all the dates, all the topics, and the registration links at Manna Insect website, which, by the way, I will put to the chat right now, so you can get the link there directly. And if you have any issues regarding the technical registration to these webinars, or any issues with voice or the picture slowing down or something like that, please try to reconnect, and then if it doesn't work, then you just have to wait for the recording. And all these sessions will be recorded, and the recording link will be sent to your inbox, usually at latest the next day. We've had some technical issues with recording earlier, so it has been delayed a little bit, and sometimes we've had access to it in a matter of a couple of hours. So it depends on how fast we can get the recording ourselves. But it will be sent to all registered participants, regardless if you can access the session live or not. So please do join the autumn sessions. You can register to all of them at once on our website, and then you can make sure that you get at least the recording, even if you don't have a chance to join the session live and ask questions. And what comes to questions, please do write them either on the chat or on the questions section that you can see probably on the right hand side of your screen, depending a little bit which device or app you're using. I will go through the questions at the end of the session, and our specialist today, Marjanen, the founder and CEO of Manna Insect, and the Italian bioindustry specialist, Saverio Danubio. This gentleman will be soon presenting us their case, but we will have questions at the end of the session. But please do write them already on the chat once you come up with one, and then we'll try to go through as many as possible within the time limit that we've been given. That said, welcome everyone. I will also set our LinkedIn and Instagram and YouTube links to the chat soon, so please do follow us on social media. And one more thing, we've just announced the Q&A, all the answers and all the questions, or at least most of the questions that were asked in the spring season. So the Q&A in full can be found at Manna's website, www.mannainsect.com, and I will also add that link to the chat during this session. That said, let's welcome our hosts, Uka and Saverio. Welcome. The floor is yours.
Okay. Good afternoon or morning or evening from my point of view as well. I already apologize. I hope my sound is working fine. It's a new computer, so I'm first time testing it. But I'm also at the airport, so you can hear an announcement, and I apologize that already beforehand. Another trip coming up in a couple hours. So this might be a little bit overlapping of what we've already done in the spring, but we do want to have something new and some new point of view in every webinar. So we're not going through everything. So I think we've gone through the business economics and these kind of numbers previously, here's another take on how to make business out of black soldier fly or insect farming in general. And this is more from the point of view of how do you prepare and how do you evaluate if you have a potential business or not. And we will go through the basics of how does the scale impact, and that every scale is possible to make business. It's just a question of your ambition level. And then we have this new, let's say, new slide on rules of BSF economics based on what we have gone through in the couple years of talking to different people, how they make business, what are the possibilities, and then of course converting that into how to make your case in your country, in your position and resources an advantage. And then of course part of that is the customers. And more or less we have at Manna 5 years of practical experience with, first of all, ourselves rearing and breeding in small scale, let's say up to 100 tons a month from one site, 1 or 2 persons doing it. And then, of course, we have a very technical background. We've built companies before and sensors. So we're kind of now implementing all those learnings from other businesses to how to help, especially small farms, small companies getting started. And I'll hand over to Saverio to introduce himself and then continue to next slide.
Okay, hi. Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here today and to join the second series of the Manna webinars. I'm Saverio Danubio, industrial biotechnologist and sustainable solutions developer. So, we cannot start the second series without mentioning a bit of what was the first series of the Manna Insect webinars. And we had 6 webinars, and we counted between direct live attending and streaming over 2,000 of you that have joined us in this little journey. And at the end of every webinar, we had, I guess, even more than 100 live answers. And it was such a pleasure to have all of you disclosing your curiosities or your cases. And this also has been reflected in hundreds of new emails, phone connections, and the positive. We are happy and honored that the positives, the feedbacks were very positive, and we were exposed in contact with the different and new cases that enlightened us also on new opportunities. We develop products and services, but most of the time it's incredible how then they can fit in a new and in a different case. And we thank you all for this kind of opening to your business and to your story. And this really gave us a big satisfaction, but also the responsibility to do always better and better. And we are continuing in this direction.
This is a very, let's say, continuously coming slides that we are keeping here to remind few things. If you are fairly new to industry, but you've been following it through LinkedIn and articles, it seems that the only way to go is to go big and centralized and robotics and automation. But we do want to remind that it makes always sense to start small and micro in this case, but also that every part, every category, you have a business opportunity and you can make a livelihood. Of course, at micro level, it's more or less a hobby and small side stream. At the mini level, you start to have a serious income, and at the small level, you're basically a small company, maybe with even a couple employees. And then you have options to either go to the other side of the aisle, but that changes the game significantly. or you can then have a smaller modules, but that each of these phases have multiple values and multiple opportunities, and it's very important that you have an idea of what is the most comfortable to you, and then also what is realistic in your, let's say, area of in the country, in your resources, and that what of these are realistic. But every one of these are completely valid levels. And then also that there is a natural way to progress also between the levels instead of going from 0 to 10 million. Just as a reminder that of course there are challenges but also opportunities at different level, that is extremely important to recognize at each part of the step. And here are of course some of them, not going through them in detail, but basically you can categorize them in two ways. Is that the micro to small scale, your advantage is that you are local and you can go to direct customers without middlemen, but also the fact that your customers need to have a fairly small need, and also that your post-processing resources are fairly limited. On the large scale, you have the opposite thing, that you can't be local anymore, you have to be global, and you have to have a lot of capex at the front. But on the other hand, then you can go very detailed products and you can have customers that are requiring hundreds or thousands of tons. So it's a very important to recognize and pre-plan also, and have this as part of the strategy. There's no right or wrong, but we do see many trying to just go to the big because it's just that big makes sense. But we do want to realize that most of the farms and agriculture works on a family level units. That's the whole agriculture business model.
And then there are the rules of the BSF economics. Something that it should be always kept in mind, because there is a lot of enthusiasm and there are many good reasons for keeping this enthusiasm. But business is another thing, and we have to be always conscious of how we are positioned in this exact moment. So you're producing something and you compete for the price and for the quality. So usually higher price, higher quality, but it's not always true, and lower price, lower quality. So and then you have to replace products that are on the market far before you were thinking to start this business, and this is an assumption you should never forget. Also, it's not a mistake, and I want to say that before, but people prefer older products, standard products they know, products they directly or the sector have been familiar with for months, years, decades. So consider that you are introducing a new product eventually if you decide to produce black soldier fly related goods. So keep that in mind. And it's not only a matter of price. You have to understand the logic behind your customers. No one eventually pays extra for sustainability or because it's insect-based. So there is a positive trend. Finally, the consideration regarding the insect market is very good. But when it comes to business, it's still like a narrow niche market, and sustainability, and I am one of the first supporters of the sustainability, is not something that business people support in the first instance at the beginning. Another thing is still missing, and you have to compete against that, is the lack of national incentives and subsidies. So it's a fact. Maybe it will change, maybe in 1 year, but at the moment you have this kind of competition, and it's not fair considering that other products maybe are subsidized and you don't. Yeah, you have to add value to your product, and so you have to post process it and to make it in that kind of transformation that it might eventually add value, and for you increasing the price and also the revenue. But this is not a fixed law, and the math should be well done. Otherwise, you have high costs, but not the product that the market recognize as very valuable and that is willing to pay high. Try always not to compete with other people that are well established for the same substrate. Eventually, you are a new player and a little player, and they can absorb all the substrate you need today, or they can do it tomorrow. Or in this way, when you compete for the organic matter that then is part of your substrate formulation, you can also trigger a mechanism where that zero value substrate, organic matter source, it becomes valuable. And so then you increase the cost of your supply. And then sell to customers that are satisfied with your current quantities. Having projections in scaling 10, 100 times more is good for a certain kind of business plans. But if your reality, if your near reality is that you might most likely in this and in the next year produce this quantity, do not project yourself too much beyond, and try to size your customer related to the amount you are capable to produce in the middle there.
So based on that and let's say the previous slides and the scale, there are many ways to find advantages on how you can convert BSF, let's say technology or insects into a valuable business model. And these are the, let's say, the basic rules that we have found in practice to be true, is that you have always advantage in your local environment, as you're cutting transportation costs, customs, and shipping a lot. Then you're basically speaking the same language, and you are always available next door, and even the customer can come and pick it up from you. So turn that definitely into an advantage, especially at the beginning when you start small. You can really utilize that. And even though we have a product and let's say we are known of climatized control units and let's say a low cost way to build them, we do advocate and say start outdoor if it's possible, and go as far as possible in outdoor conditions and with minimal capex. And then if that can go you as far as possible you want to go in your business endeavor. If you just want to make, let's say, business for yourself and support the local community, it might be completely enough. Or if you come to a conclusion that for you to go professional and bigger scale you need a controlled environment, then But in many cases, if the weather conditions allow, it doesn't make sense to immediately go into climatized environment. I definitely suggest, or we promote, for you to start first in outdoor conditions and then utilize that fact. There's, especially in Southeast Asia, there's many bigger plants and in Africa and in India that completely use the outdoor conditions at their advantage of minimizing tech. And that actually comes to the third point as well, is that you should always start with fully manual process with yourself and doing all the labor, and then try to get as far as possible. And then, does it make sense to invest into an automation or robot or something to replace that person? And when does it make sense? It's not evident that it makes sense, even in a fairly big scale as well. So you use this as an advantage. You can stay flexible. You don't need to define specific, let's say, automation sizes and capacity and these as far as possible. And then definitely start selling to end customers first, instead of getting a middleman like a feed company in between. Just what they value, and then what is the requirement, and then of course you can cut the middleman at the beginning, at least at the beginning. At certain volumes, of course, it starts to make sense to have distributors, but at the beginning trying to find a direct end customer, like a chicken grower or someone in the agriculture. And then basically we saved the most important probably to the last, is that you're always confined with the substrate, wet streams, bio-waste that is available to you within the vicinity. The bio-waste or the substrate will not be possible to transport. I would say 100 kilometers start to be already a lot, let alone from another country. So that's your end confinement in any way, and of course partly the legislative framework in your country. So example, if in your area there's a lot of dairy farms and you have a lot of cow manure, which is basically free for you, or even someone's going to pay for you, then you can start analyzing that. What are the options of using BSF to convert dairy manure into product? And in that case, yes, you can't sell it as an animal feed, most likely, but you can create frass out of it, and you can sell the frass in many ways. So it's very important that you analyze the substrates and the bio-waste streams that you have available, and in what quantities, in what seasons, and how many recipes you need to make to have a full 365-day running business. And then on the other side, there's many more than just purely animal feed or pet food, which are the kind of requiring the highest possible quality and hygienic level from that end product, for exotic animals, for fishing use and other use. There's many these low-hanging fruits that are smaller markets, but still very, let's say, high profitable markets.
We have to find the right customer. And it's not an easy task. We have a customer localized on all the 5 continents, and business are meant to be micro, or they wanna be medium, somebody even big. And according to what your idea of business is, then you have to match with the right customers. So animal feed and pet food industry is a very old sector, and so you have to compete with the big players and with the capacity to produce at the higher quality standard, immense quantities, and to have a very small margin profits. And maybe it's a sector where you can find your little space, or maybe you cannot, but you have to be aware of who was playing there before you. There are alternative sectors, alternative customers that maybe are less demanding, and you can satisfy their request of kilos or a couple of tons, and you can have is always expected to be in this way, that when you sell smaller quantities, you can have higher margins. And then everybody is really fascinated by becoming global, by exporting in different countries. But the reality is that when you start this kind of activity, or you have this kind of expectation with a product that is relatively new, with a product that has still some sort of need of updating the regulations in many countries, um, what is a favorable condition today cannot be a favorable condition in 6 months. And you have to expect that. Sometimes your product can be stuck at the custom for whatever kind of reason, or you can have some sudden extra costs. And another factor that you have to consider when you want to export, when you want to have customers abroad, who knows, maybe even in another continent, is that black certified business is emerging everywhere, and today you can have people that produce locally that wants to make the customer aware, and they put that like national flag on the product. And so they have that plus, because when usually when people see that is produced locally, they assume that is better, that is fresher, that it's for some reason more convenient. And then there is also the fair logic that they help the local working system, and so you have this kind of competition always to keep in mind.
Also, referring to our what I said already before, is that we of course have so far been known, and our products have been on the climatization side. We started to look, based on many customer interactions, more holistically, how do we empower insect farming and farmers. And what we see are four areas of insect farming. The first one is that how do we get the maximum productivity out of black soldier flies and the larvae. And one way to think about this from technical point of view is that how do we create optimal environments for the flies and larvae. And this is what we have so far mainly focused on, from the point of view as how can we be as low tech and low cost as possible, but still create an optimal environment. But this alone is not the whole picture and story. So now we are more focusing on and more kind of let's say expanding on how do we help on optimizing and managing the actual insect production from small scale to large scale. And what did we learn in 5 years on what needs to be documented, what information needs to be available, and what data to use to predict next coming task, and the capacity for you to be able to sell and manage. And that comes into the third part, which is continuous learning and improvement. I mean, we as an insect industry are still extremely young compared to chicken growing, which has been going on for thousands of years, but let's say industrially around 200 years. And I get newsletters every week from chicken growing and these, and they are improving it, and there's something new all along. So we cannot ever stop learning and improving the processes and the learnings. So this is one area where we want to do our contribution on the tools and also sharing the information as possible. And then the third one, again, the fourth one, which is again the last, but definitely one of the most critical, is that how do we help people who want to get livelihood out of that to match buyers and sellers and find ways to sell. I mean, in a normal agricultural industry and a farm, the farmers are not the business people, and they don't package and sell their products. They basically are part of a a channel or a like a process where they get the young larvae or the young cups, and then they grow them, and then they sell it to one buyer, and the buyer will then make products out of that. So we need the similar kind of ecosystem. So this is more or less our ideology and how we want to help and empower the insect farming. And we have identified that it's not about the tech alone or just maximizing the black soldier fly larvae itself.
And here there are some pictures. We are very happy to show you pictures from our Manna reference farm. This is in northern Finland, 30 minutes by car from our headquarters in Oulu. And we are in a farm, and we have 3 containers active in this farm. And sometimes we make a showroom case for our customers. Some other times we make tests for us. It's very important that we have a near contact with the reality. What I was saying before, it doesn't matter how good your product looks alike in theory, but then is the practice. You need the theory, but you need also the practice. So we practically have this installation in this farm, and the farmers are very happy to enjoy the use of the containers and of the products and get rid of the waste. And on the same time, we have our remotely controllable system. And in sometimes, in some cases, sometimes we decide to see how we can even overtake the normal performance that today we declare. We can assume that we have a different scenario and so on. So we are very happy of this installation. And in this picture, you can see on the left, Tony, the head of the sales department, and Uka on the right, our CEO of Manna Insect. And in the middle, there is our substrate, potato, spoiled potato that have been crushed, and they represent most of our substrate source, and then it's blended with other nutrients. And in this black tray, you can see Uka that is removing the juvenile larvae ready for the transfer into the crates with the substrate, with the crushed potatoes and other organic matter. So that's me. Very happy face, because for those who have been working with the larvae, it's such a satisfaction that in this operation of eggs removal, you find your support, your whatever is your tool for collecting the eggs, full of eggs. I don't know if the picture is clear enough, but on that wood stick you can see the entire perimetrial area is completely full of eggs. And this made my work, more efficient. Like you scratch it and you collect a lot of eggs. And this is also something that we pay a lot of attention about. Like we optimize everything in a way that it's possible to obtain the best situation, not the absolute best, because sometimes trying to achieve the perfection is not healthy for your business or even for your personal life. But we are getting always to the right side, the right compromise for achieving the maximum, keeping always the things simple, because at the end we don't want a NASA engineer to work with our system, but just farmers, young entrepreneurs, or everybody is enthusiastic about continuing this insect this insect wave. And so I was very happy. In the next slide, you see me with the container with all the wood sticks ready to be loaded in the nursery container. And on the left side, there is a Tony that is allocating the wood sticks in the right place. We have found gives us the best eggs collection. So we really study each of the steps, and we try to always obtain the best performance.
Yes, this gives an illustration of ways to configure, in this case, climatized units powered by Manna Mind. But we've been running 4 years a complete process in 2 or 3 containers where there's nursing, rearing, and breeding in separate containers or in one container. And from those, we have made designs that are part of our services to help customers realize their rearing or insect production facilities, let's say, especially in a modular way. So here's an example of 3D images, and basically they are actually realized in the insect farm, for example, where you can do breeding and rearing and nursing either in one or in multiple containers, and then you can expand from there to have more rearing containers or more breeding containers in one site, or then move to another site. But this gives you an idea that we have designed everything, and we've started to work, or we've always worked in a model where everything is easily reconfigurable depending on your needs. An example, our reference farm, which is run in Finland, and we have one in India also by a customer practically alone. It has been fairly easy to teach them to run all the process and make them completely independent what comes to egg production and nursing and then producing actual final results, albeit like a larvae or frass or even eggs to other people.
Where to go from here? So this is another evergreen slide that we repropose in our webinars because it's important to keep in mind these little notes. Understand what are the challenges in your own country. For example, studying how much feed is imported, what is the current livestock industry, but also what is the sector of your interest. We in general always mention animal farming, or we consider the black soda fly like an exceptional source for proteins, fat in the feed sector, but focus on what is the business you want to develop, and understand how the animals are fed, for example, if you want to produce a feed, and also navigate around you, try to understand what is available. Before, we already mentioned that it's not wise to compete for a waste source. It doesn't matter if that looks like the best one you can have for your larvae, and it guarantees you a premium, a quality product. Just make in a way that you come to a new product production in the easiest way, and consider in the country where you are developing your business, what is the legislation? What are the restrictions that you have to consider from the beginning until the end? And also, who are your competitors? This is something we suggest to do. One, because if you have an already established competitor, he might have found troubles before you, So eventually you can study your competitor and you can understand exactly what are the difficulties. Maybe he could already struggle in a certain sector, and well, why you have to compete with him? Eventually he produced a black butterfly, but is operating in a sector that is not good as it seemed to you, and you can change your sector, you can change your customer, and you can even shape your product. In this way, less competition, and eventually you have new opportunities in a sector that you were not considering before. And start little. We always say that. Start little. It's incredible how something that you monitor as a negligible in 10 trays, then it becomes possibly problematic with 100 trays, and then it becomes a disaster with 400 trays. And it's also for you, like to learn how exactly the process works, because it costs you nothing. Like we see the word of the black soda reading reduced to a tray, the substrate, and the 5 days old larvae. So that's all the system that then you upscale until the level you prefer. And be flexible as much as possible. Everybody has this dream to have the mega farm, but start little, and especially start with the resources you have available, or that resources that do not commit you too much to have immediate results. Fixed infrastructure and a specific method can in somehow be an advantage. Create a business plan that it's grounded, like interact with your possible partners, with your possible organic matter suppliers, with your possible customers. Make your grid already active, and try to be conscious of the situation. This is healthy for your business, but this is also healthy from the financial point of view, because we see that the insect sector is finally shining, and for several reasons beyond the sustainability, the possibility to cover some big holes left by this global supply chain that goes on and off for different reasons. You never know, something happens in a country on the other side of the world and you cannot receive your feed. So insects locally can cover this kind of luck, and governments and entrepreneurs, a little bit in all the sectors, insects are receiving that kind of consideration that before didn't have. So this means that if you come with a well done business plan, if you come with a fair experience, you might have more possibilities to access to a loan, to capital investment, to governmental grants, and many other opportunities that might be specific to the business you're focusing now.
This is a new section that we want to add here for everything, and just tell what is going to happen. And of course, this is subjective from our point of view, but in the future we do want to also include other things here. I do immediately recognize that we forgot to add there BSF Con and Insecta events that will happen in the, I think, 10th and 11th of September in UK. BSF Con, I recommend to go. And then Insecta is 13th and 14th in Magdeburg in Germany. Again, I definitely recommend to go, or watch stream if there is one online. Saverio will be there. Unfortunately, I'm not available there. But other than that, we are now more heavily in East Africa, especially. We have a couple of our team members living in Nairobi, Kenya. So contact us, and it's fairly easy for us to see physically now in the East African area. I'm flying now today to East Africa for a couple of weeks with them, but they will stay there for much longer, at least this year. And just a reminder that next webinar is about a month away, and that we will also have other webinars which will relate to our product announcements in September and October, and probably even November, that will go beyond just, let's say, climatized unit. So if you're interested in anything, just follow us from LinkedIn and you will get notified. Also, we are now more involved in South and North America, and if you're interested in there, and we've been working hard and solved any, let's say, technical barriers of supporting any voltage from 110 volt to 230 volts to even 430 volts, which is an industrial, let's say, three-phase power. So we're not limited in that sense that let's say we used to initially be. And let's see what the future brings, but these are the, let's say, the highlights that I put here for now for the short term. And of course, we're here to help. I mean, we want to do these free webinars and get you started, but of course, we are a business and we do have concrete products and consultancy that we do for a paid services. And of course, then we can get more one-on-one and individual in that sense. But we try to be holistic and flexible and looking open-minded on all aspects on how do we empower insect farmers and insect farming, especially in the left category of micro, small, and mini scale. We have very little, let's say, less to offer to the large scale models, and there are already a lot of players in that field. So we are more or less focusing on the helping individuals and small companies and startups to get started and start actually rearing and breeding with minimal capex. But for this part, I like to thank you for participating and listening, and I like to thank Saverio also from your part. And we have about 12 minutes for questions. Tom will take over, and I will already apologize if I have to leave. I think my plane starts to board in about 5 to 7 minutes, but I'll be here as long as that happens. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Well done. Okay, we have some questions already in the questions section. Like you guys said, we have a maximum of 12 minutes left. So I will start asking questions. If you have any, please do write them either on the chat field or the questions section. The first one comes from Kusambudi, and he's asking, do you have any hirings in India?
Well, what we try to be is agnostic for a country. So unfortunately, our resources are limited as we have basically deployed to tens of countries and have customers there. But we do have partners, and we do have a partner in India that I can refer and ask. He has a company there, and he works there in Odisha, Bhubaneswar. But from our point of view, directly, we don't have subsidiaries or companies in different parts. We try to be the, let's say, the backbone and then work with partners.
Okay, then Nishant is asking about the different sizes. Uka mentioned micro, mini, and small scale. And Nishant is asking, could you give an idea what is small need requirement? What is the sort of the small scale that we're talking about here?
Yeah, I think this is a difficult. Small is very subjective, and we definitely need to give more understanding. I think on our pages, slides regarding that, we had number of trays there, but I would say that small, what we consider comfortable, let's say, doing in a container is what we have done ourselves with, let's say, 1 to 2 person operations. We are talking about 100 to, let's say, maximum 200 tons of bio waste processed in a month level. So yeah, in an industrial scale, 200 tons a month is small, but I say that I think it's webinar 4 or 5. We go through the actual business metrics of small operations, and we're talking already tens of thousands of dollars a month of revenue and profit levels when we talk about small. But small in the sense that the investments are maximum to a few $100,000, and it's a 1 to 2 man operation. So that's why we call it small.
All right. Then Janine is asking, did you have any difficulty finding the equipment you needed for insect farming in Finland, especially like the food crusher machine or the potato crusher that is seen in some of our pictures and videos?
Initially, yes, because we had no experience of what is needed. And our difficulty is not that we couldn't order an equipment. It's that what we want to order and test equipment is that they are universally available everywhere, because we are not shipping from Finland. Basically, even regarding of deploying so-called a full container, we are shipping a 400 times 300 millimeter box, which is the brains, from Finland. Everything else is sourced locally. So our challenge has always been that we need to not just look at what we can get in Finland or in Europe, but can that be sourced in Africa, in India, in Colombia, in Caribbean islands, and so on. So those are the kind of equipment we want to test. And for the crusher, there's many options, and they start from, let's say, $1,000 to up to $5,000. You can already have a lot of variation, and we do also have a list of links that we give you as a guide.
All right. Nishant is asking, are your containers insulated? How is the temperature maintained?
Yeah, it's partly that the more you insulate, and we do have, and just to clarify how we work, is that our product is Manna Mind, let's say a holistic control unit that can create the environment automatically inside a space, for example, a container. Then we have a very detailed assembly guidance and bill of materials for containers as an example on how to refurbish it, how to source materials, how to assemble it, so that you can install the Manna Mind control unit there and create the environment there. And part of that is that we have recommendation of minimum insulation, and then to minimize the capacity of the equipment so that you have a low power. Eventually, the actual heating and cooling comes from heaters and AC units, but the insulation makes their capacity as small as possible.
All right. Another from Nishant. In your experience, is it a good idea to have storage facility for the substrate, for instance, a cold storage?
Yeah, I think Saverio can probably answer this.
Yeah, well, never running of substrate, it's a good thing. It's better to have a stock, but you have to understand then at what cost. Some substrates needs a pre-treatment maturation, if you want to say that. Some entrepreneurs also like to add microorganisms and other things to improve the organic matter, nutrient availability, and so on. If you have the possibility to keep at low temperature to preserve your organic matter in this way, having always a batch ready when you are running already the current one, that's good. But you have to evaluate at what cost, because maybe it's so available for you that you can immediately recover from 2-3 players, that it doesn't make a lot of sense to invest in a cooling system just for storing the substrate. I would rather invest it in for better preserving the product if you have to make an investment. And please let me also add a consideration regarding the events of September. In BSF Con will be the 11th and 12th, and Insecta will be the 13th and 14th of September. Just to clarify that.
All right. Then, have you tested rearing with brewery spent grains?
I personally don't have experience. We have customers who have experience. I'm not sure if Saverio has, but what we have heard and what I've read from articles and talked to people, it is actually very, let's say, high quality and very attainable if you can get it. I think there's few caveats, and then of course you have to do a recipe of you get moisture level correct and so on. But I think from the start, if you get that free, I think it's a very good starting point.
Yeah, I doubt it will be free for a longer time again, but if you have it for free, it's an excellent source, not only for the nutrients that secures to your substrate formulation, but also because it's a matrix. It's in somehow already containing that kind of inert part that allows your substrate to have that kind of structure where maybe the larvae can navigate, can move better than in those very creamy, fluffy substrates. So you combine two things together, and then obviously you always have to come to your recipe also in consideration of your climate and in consideration of your black soldier fly rearing technique.
Okay. We have lots of questions. Unfortunately, we don't have time to go through all of them here. We only have 3 minutes left. But there is a question from Sibu Siso. What are the requirements needed for partnership?
We actually have tried to make this very simple and easy because we don't want to go into agreements and then all these things when none of party knows each other and then there's let's say not a clear understanding the business. So I want to immediately clarify that for us partner doesn't mean reseller. We're not looking resellers. What the partner in our case means that they actually use our technology and part of our solution in their own services to end customer, whether it is to build the containers and technically support them, or selling larvae, or selling a service where let's say our technology and our solutions are part of it. That being said, the easy way to start as a partner is to order one MannaMind unit and start using that. You immediately after that you get a license to create your own products around that, which you are responsible, of course, for your customers. And then if it moves beyond that, then we can do an agreement where there is a partner price for that specific country, or we've even done, let's say, exclusive licenses to a particular country where then we work through that partner if there's new customers in that. But we found that the best way to do it is to start by deploying and ordering one MannaMind unit, building the container and start using it, and it goes from there. There's no separate path in our model.
Okay, one last question from Janine. Who are some organizations / government departments that were supportive of your insect business and helped you get started?
Well, I would say I like to actually thank two groups. The most important group that I like to thank is our current customers, because they have been the reason why we're doing it, and they basically validate it, and they're basically funding us through actual sales. But if we're thinking the first years and the first times when we were just developing it, the Finnish government, we have a fortunate situation that we have a very good R&D support from the government in Finland to support us. And then of course we are a VC backed company, so we do have investors that have put the money to trust us. So that's basically where we got started. But now we are most happy of being more, let's say, customer funded than government funded company.
Thank you, gentlemen. We've just run out of time. It's 2 o'clock in Finland, and we're done. Unfortunately, we don't have time to go through all the questions. We have this season a limited time that they only have 1 hour for each session, because unfortunately we've spent much too much people's time in the spring because people were busy going elsewhere and so forth. They only had reserved an hour, so we tried to keep our presentations within that time limit from now on. Please do go through Manna's website. I will add one more time the link to the chat where you can see all the, unfortunately not all, but most of the questions that were asked during the spring session. So there probably will be similar questions and then answers to those questions that you're probably pondering at the moment. And during the autumn, we will also go through all these webinar chats once again, collect all the questions and try to answer as many as possible in our future articles on the website, on LinkedIn, on videos, on YouTube, pictures on Instagram and so forth. So please do follow us on social media as well as subscribe to our newsletter and of course register to the following webinars. Like Uka mentioned earlier, we have the next one already in less than a month's time. So you can find all the links, all the topics, dates, registration links at Manna website. Thank you for joining. Thank you, gentlemen. Uka, good luck for your travels in Africa. Ciao, Saverio. And then see you next time. Bye.
Bye.